Dear friends in Jesus Christ, we appreciate people who notice. To notice is more than just physically seeing. It entails seeing beyond the obvious to what really is there. You might be able to think of a time when you are going through a difficult experience and someone noticed. Having noticed, they may have gone on to express their awareness in some thoughtful way. There are times when we see without noticing. People send us signals that we miss. That may be more the case today than it was in the past. We tend to live life at a faster pace. We have not the time to notice what we see. It may not always be a matter of time. We can fail to notice because at some deep level, we fear that if we do notice, it will make demand on us. We protect ourselves by not noticing. When we ask people, "How are you?" part of us probably hopes that they will not tell us. It can be easier to cope up with suffering that take place away from us, and more difficult to notice the individual before us who is suffering. In the story that Jesus told in today's gospel, an exceedingly rich man failed to notice the destitute Lazarus at his gate. He must have seen Lazarus almost every day at his gate, but he did not notice him. The parable suggests that the rich man failed to notice not because he was too busy, but because he was too self-absorbed. He was so immersed in his own self-indulgent lifestyle that he had lost the ability to notice others, like the likes of Lazarus at his gate. The gospel reading also suggests that his lifestyle so absorbed him that he had ceased to notice God or God's call. If he had been attentive to God's word in Moses and the prophets, he would have recognized that God was calling out to him through Lazarus, who sat at his gate. The rich man had 5 brothers who were somewhat like himself. They too were immersed in their own comfortable world. They too failed to notice what God was saying to them through Moses and prophets. They too were not hearing God's call to them through the suffering of others. The story Jesus told was not about 2 groups or classes of people, but 2 individuals. Many of the stories Jesus told were about individual human beings. Perhaps Jesus was reminding us that God comes to us in the individual who crosses our path. The Lord calls out to us through the concrete human being with whom I come face to face. We are called to notice not just in some global, general way, but in a very particular and personal way. We are to notice the unique individuals who stands before us at any particular time and respond to them in accordance with how God has spoken to us through Moses and the prophets. As the followers of Christ, we not only have Moses and the prophets, but we have the teaching of Jesus. Jesus had taught us that when another human being stands before us in need, he himself is standing before us. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Jesus identified himself not with a class of people, but with the individual who come before us, who calls out to us. When two people, it can sometimes be difficult to know who the needy one really is. In the story that Jesus told, at one level, it is obvious that Lazarus is the needy one. Yet, in reality, the rich man was in greater need. In spite of Lazarus' misery, his ultimate future was secured. For all the rich man's good fortune, his ultimate future was anything but secure. In a sense, the rich man needed Lazarus more than the Lazarus needed him. Lazarus was assured of salvation, whereas the rich man's path to salvation was through Lazarus. It was in responding to Lazarus that the rich man would have made it to Abraham's bosom. When someone who appears to be in much greater need than me crosses my path, I may be the really needy one, and that person may be my path to salvation. We are very much dependent on one another. That is the way God made us, and we often have most to receive from those who appear to have the least to give us. Yes, dear friends, in Jesus Christ, it is likely that the rich man in the parable had many friends who shared his heavily laden table. Lazarus seems to have had no friends. However, when he died, it was revealed that he had some wonderful friends. After all, the angels who carried him to Abraham's sides at the banquet of life. God had always been his friend. The tragedy was that he encountered no angels, no living signs of God's friendship in his earthly life. Our calling is to become those angels now, to be living signs of God's friendship to all who cross our path in the life.